Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Talk, Real Solutions. I'm Ginger Gadsden. Thank you so much for joining us for what I hope will be a fantastic conversation on something we all need to be talking a little bit more about: mental health and wellness. And I found the perfect person to join us to add to this conversation. He is Dr. Ademola Adewale. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm also joined by News 6 anchor and reporter Jerry Askin, who has covered a lot of stories on mental health in our community, which is something very important. That's how you take the gauge of the community now, the mental health of the community. So Dr. Adewale, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start talking to you about your story, first of all, because, you can only speak about how things impact you first,
Yes.
right? So when you talk about being an ER physician, which is what you are by trade,
Yes.
and that has to be something you studied hard for, you have a love for medicine, and you want to help people. But something happened during COVID, for not just you, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
We started seeing people who had mental health issues
Yes.
that were not addressed before.
Correct.
And you started to lose the love for what you have always loved doing. Tell us a little bit about that.
So for me personally, after being in the front line for so many years, there are several changes, which I refer to as bureaucratic changes in medicine, that were affecting the way you do what you do. And that was putting undue stress to doctors, that a lot of doctors were feeling so much pressure between balancing the time for you to see the patient from the time you discharge them. So you feel like you got to move them out quickly. And they're watching these metrics, and sometimes your compensation is tied to these metrics. So this pressure was affecting a lot of physicians before COVID. So when COVID came, and I was already feeling that, because one of the things we also started doing is called the lean process, which is what Toyota uses in the factory to get assembly line medicine. So basically you bring a patient to a room, you see them, they move them to a different section to wait till all the result comes back. And it hit me hard one day when I had the lady that was going through miscarriage. That is the lowest point of their life. They're scared, they're afraid, and I see them, and she's whisked away to observation area with tons of other people. And I just lost it. I said, what kind of medicine are we practicing? And that hit me so hard, that's when I started having this disillusionment with medicine. Then COVID came. Then when COVID came, for the first time in my life, I've been doing ER for 20 years, I felt unable to care for my patient.
Wow.
Because now we have a disease that I cannot see, I cannot smell, but when it hits you, you're dead in the early phase of the game.
It's bad.
So now for once as physicians, we felt invincible, now we're not invincible anymore.
Yeah.
So compound that with what we're dealing with before COVID. So I fell into what you call colloquial depression. I hated my job.
Wow.
I wanted to walk away from it. And what happens is when you have colloquial depression, if you stay in that state for so long, you'll be burnt out, then you eventually go into full depression.
And who wants to see a doctor who is burnt out and depressed?
Ironically, during this period, we're having a conversation on whole patient care. And I said, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. How can you have a physician that's not whole trying to preach whole patient care to a patient? So I asked myself the question that I have to be whole first before I can provide whole patient care. And I started this wholeness journey before COVID. But when COVID came, it was just too much.
Yeah.
You saw so many people die unnecessarily, and you cannot do anything. That you don't want to go to work. But the fear of walking away from your colleagues on the front line overwhelms you. You can't leave them. So we got to go stick together and fight this battle. So it got to a point where for us as men, a lot of men out there, most people out there, we don't talk about it. We internalize it. And what happened is we start projecting. So the day it hit me was I got home one day and I yelled at my daughter, and my wife followed me to my office. She closed the door behind me. She said, honey, I am tired of trying to manage you and trying to manage your kids before you get home. I said, what are you talking about? Said, do you know what I go through every day before you get home to coach them how to
Oh, wow.
welcome you home?
Wow.
Because I do not know which mood or what mood you're in. I'm like, whoa,
Oh,
we got
my
to do something
gosh.
about it. And I sat down, I cried. I said, oh my God, this is real. I'm actually projecting to my kids.
You didn't even recognize
I didn't
yourself.
recognize it.
Yeah, okay, so, not that what we do here in the media is anything close to what you do, but we cover a lot of stories that are traumatic. And one of the stories that we covered, and I know Jerry covered it too, was George Floyd, right? And so you have that's happening during COVID. And so you are out there covering stories in the community. Talk about a little bit about what you saw, Jerry, and how that impacted you as well.
2020 was a tough year for many of us. The George Floyd shooting, not the shooting, the George Floyd incident happened, as well as the pandemic. So many people when I was reporting in the field, were just going through a hard time. It was so much emotion and rage and depression from people. I admitted on TV that I'd actually seek therapy after the George Floyd incident and during COVID, because it was a tough time, and many people, many business owners, many people were just going through a rough time. They were depressed and stressed, and many people were really seeking therapy.
Yeah, and the thing that I found that really caught me by surprise is that we would see you on TV every day reporting and doing a great job, this is just what I do, but behind all of this, you're suffering and struggling. And I feel like I remember the moment you said that on TV. I was so surprised but proud at the same time, because I said, even if one man hears that and sees you and you're impeccably dressed and put together and sees that and says, if that guy is having a problem and I feel some kind of way, then it must be okay for me to ask for help too. Do you find that is happening more and more?
Well, it's not happening as much as I would like for it to happen, because there's no awareness, And I just did a YouTube post that talked about stress, the enemy that we hide. We hide it effectively. And what happened is there are some manifestation of stress that we ought to pay attention to. Stress could manifest in form of physical, emotional, and also cognitively. So when you look at the physical manifestation of stress, someone will start having headaches, tension headaches, indigestions that are just not going away, heartburns, palpitation, start having back pains. That doesn't make any sense.
It manifests itself in different ways.
Physically, Then additionally, when you talk about a cognitive manifestation of stress, what happens is they start having forgetfulness. They're indecisive, and you start noticing that this person used to make decisions quickly, but now they're not sharp in making decisions. That stress that's manifesting in form of cognitive manifestation. Then the emotional part of manifestation is just excessive crying in some people, overeating some people, and some people just get withdrawn. In addition to that, what happens is they have emotional lability. Any little things, they overreact and you just snap. So I tell people that if you start seeing any of this sign, take a pause for a second and check yourself out. And ask people like, do you think something is wrong? It's what I call the mental health check. That if I start seeing I'm having headaches unnecessarily, that I cannot figure out why I'm having it, something stressful is going on. I'm having palpitation, heartburns. I don't normally get
people,
that.
you wouldn't associate that with stress. You're like, I have to go, there's something internally wrong with me, or something that's, I need to get checked out. But and it's never about the thing that it could be something small and you're upset about it. It's not about that thing.
No, it's something bigger than that. Because what happens is when I get into the physiology of stress, that means what happens within your body when you go through stress. Your body has what we refer to as stress response hormones that include cortisol, adrenaline, dopamine, and slew of other ones. And what happens is these hormones are released in your body cyclically throughout the day in response to stress. So most of us, we need stress to function. We need stress to be alive. And I refer to that as a functional stress. So we have a threshold of stress that we actually perform the best. Most type A personalities, most successful men, women, we need some stress to get us through. However, so you have this parabolic curve. When you tip to the other side of the curve, it becomes a dysfunctional stress.
And that stress and rage was big during the pandemic
Exactly.
in 2020 because many of us, we never saw an end in sight.
Exactly.
And for black men who I spoke with, not only were we dealing with racial concerns, but also
Exactly.
stress as far as when will our lives get back to normal, if you will.
Yeah.
So that was a tough part as well. What do you say to black men out there to encourage them particularly to go to therapy? I spoke with a therapist who said only 40% of black men were going to therapy, and she didn't like that.
That's actually a high number.
Well, I'm sorry, she said that she's seeing a 40% increase
Okay,
of
that's
black
good.
men go to therapy after the George Floyd incident.
Yeah, what happens is we have to remove the stigma. You know, there's a stigma that's attached with mental health. What happens is people misinterpret mental health as mental illness. It's different. Mental health basically deals with your ability to manage normal daily functioning. Can you get up and go to work and come back home? Can you relate to the society? Can you assimilate? That's what your mental well-being is all about.
Yeah.
Are you able to do that without any problem? If you start having problem with that, then you seek help. Counseling, that's where that comes in. And you may need some counseling, you may need some cognitive behavioral therapy sessions to help you manage situations. Sometimes we go through stuff that's beyond our capacity to handle. So I seek help to give me guidance.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to start doing more. Then it has to be the awareness part of it.
Yeah.
We lack the awareness. But it's okay to realize that if you stay in a state of abnormal mental well-being in a persistent way, then you're going to have mental illness.
That's the difference.
Exactly. Now, mental illness now has to be diagnosed by a psychiatrist. They have to be on the medication for it. Mental health does not need all of that. You just need someone to help you,
Manage.
a mentor,
Yes,
to help you
yes.
manage
Oh, yeah.
just daily activities. That's what it is. So if you're a man out there, a woman out there struggling with managing daily activities, maybe your schedule, time management, and it's putting undue stress on you, then seek help to someone that knows about time management to help you.
Yes.
I do something called 24 hours bucket to help you manage time. Actually,
What is that?
I'm doing a podcast on that.
Okay,
next week.
okay. What is that?
So basically, people tell me that I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that, I don't have time for this. So I say, imagine you put your day, which has 24 hours, in a bucket. And ask yourself, how many hours do I want to commit to sleeping in a day? So let's say 7 hours. And how many hours does it take me to commute to work? Let's say an hour. So that's 8 hours. So you have 16 hours left. And if you say, okay, so I have 16 hours left. Maybe I want to do 10 hours of work every day. So you still have 6 hours left. So you have 6 hours left to do what's important to you. You can spend that 6 hours whichever way you want it. Time for yourself, we all need a me time.
Yeah.
Time for your spouse, your partner, we all need that. Time with your children, we all need. That's 6 hours.
Yeah, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of
but
time.
people don't see that. So I
Sure.
have some of my clients that I coach on time management. When I go through, I say, wow, I have 6 hours to manage.
But people don't think that they have because we can be on this for 6
Exactly.
hours. We're
Just
scrolling and scrolling.
Exactly.
That it's a time suck. And so
Exactly.
you have to prioritize now.
Exactly.
But how do we normalize making sure that we are checking in on our mental health? And I like that you call it mental well-being.
Exactly.
Well-being.
Exactly. So the way to normalize that is to realize that we have to remove that stigma. I'm not crazy. I'm fine. It's just like my regular health. I just want to make sure I'm fine. And what I encourage people to do now, and I started doing this about 8-9 months ago, I call 5 of my male friends or that I know every week, and I just say, how you doing? When I see someone, I ask you, how you doing? And they say, I'm fine. And I say, I look them in the eyes and I say, how you really doing? And you watch their response.
You stop and wait.
Exactly.
Instead of just because sometimes you don't even wait for the answer. Everybody's like, good, okay, good, and you
just
keep
moving.
going.
But see,
Yeah.
that's free.
Yeah.
Calling someone to see how you're
Exactly.
doing. One therapist said that people, especially black men, are afraid to go to therapy because of accessibility and cost.
Yes.
But you can call someone for free
Yeah.
and check on them,
Yeah.
or even call your friends and
Exactly.
check on them.
And we just have to remove that stigma. It does not mean you're crazy.
Or
just or weak. No,
Yes.
we're too mature to think. Oh, I don't want to perceive me as weak. In the field of medicine, which is my field, doctors don't want to talk about it. It was not till 2 years ago that we started encouraging doctors to talk about it. Because what happened is they have the perception like, oh, you weak, it's going to be in my record. If I'm trying to look for another job, they should I have depression, I have anxiety. So they try not to talk about it.
How can
And
you not talk? But
exactly.
people. Okay, so I mean, as a doctor, and I admit that people see you as you are all-knowing, right? You have the answer to everything. You're a
Exactly.
doctor. You must know so many things, and you know, you can heal me, you can help me, but you need time for yourself too.
I call it suffering in silence.
Suffering in silence.
A lot of doctors do that, even till today, despite the fact that there is increased awareness. Where I work with Advent Health, and that's where I predominantly work my ER job, my other job. And we actually work so hard to create a center for physician well-being in the hospital. We have peer counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists that provide free 6 counseling sessions to any physician and the medical staff that needs help, free, anonymously. You know, and we're still struggling to get people to use it.
Wow.
Here's what I found also, and I'm not sure how many are black, but people I spoke with also say BIPOC, Black Indigenous People of Color.
Yes.
They want to go to a black doctor.
Ding,
So
ding,
what I
ding,
learned
ding.
was more black men tend to want to go to a black therapist because they can trust them more, they can relate to them more perhaps. Are you seeing that as well?
When you talk about health inequity, that's one of the biggest obstacles, because we feel comfortable being cared for by someone that look like us. We can trust them. But guess what? There's only 3% of us in the oil industry. We're less than 5%.
3%.
Yeah.
And that's
a
doctors.
black men that are in the field of medicine, maybe less than 5% of women.
Yeah.
So there's not enough of us. So that's where they have this movement now to encourage more black men, women to go into medicine. We actually seen the highest increase in black women going to medicine that we ever seen before,
That's awesome.
which is changing the paradigm, you know. So now we're trying to push more men to go because we need more of us to take care of the community. Studies have shown that if you care for someone that looks like you, you have more tendency to actually abide by what they tell you. Do this, do that, I'll see you in 3 months. You will do it versus someone that doesn't look like
Well,
you.
because you feel like that person has walked in your shoes and they know your story a little bit better, right?
Exactly.
So there's a trust factor there.
Exactly.
And not to mention, not to cut you off, not to mention the Tuskegee experiment, and historically, some black people may only trust going to a black doctor for
Exactly.
those historical reasons.
Exactly. That stigma is still out there today.
So if we're sitting here and there's someone watching and they're struggling, but they still don't know just quite where to start, what would your best advice be for that particular person who's watching right now and maybe on the fence and but wants to but doesn't know how?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. When I started my journey, I call it the journey to wholeness. What I first did is I did an introspective search. I just sat down and I looked at myself. And I looked at a day in my life. And I realized that when I'm going to work in the morning, I'm impatient. I'm honking, you know. If you cut me off, I'm honking. If you stay too long at the stop sign, and I said, oh, that's not healthy. Then I start looking at patterns. And I said, I get these migraines. I don't get migraines. So I started looking at patterns. When I saw that patterns, I said, something is not right. So I did a first self-inventory. Most of us need to do that. You know, it's part of my own personal wellness check. I call it my pause button and my reset button. You want to check yourself. So once you identify that, don't be afraid to seek help. Talk to your friends first if you feel comfortable talking to them. Yeah. Everyone needs to have someone that can be your outlet. Everybody needs a mentor. I have a mentor. I mentor other people that it may not be professionally, they may have other issues they want to talk to me about.
Sure.
And by virtue of the experience I may have gone through the same situation, I give them guidance.
And that's free.
It's free. So seek help, talk to someone you feel comfortable with about how you feel, and let them help you say, okay, based on what you're telling me, I think we should see a counselor. And if they say that to you, don't reject that. Embrace it. That's a journey to be mentally well as it relates to your mental health. And we need to forget about that stigma and say, you know what, I'm going to take this step. Because if you don't do that, you start projecting to your loved ones.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
One thing great that came out of COVID, I will say, is the virtual options for therapy as well.
Exactly.
So reminding people that there are virtual options out there. You don't have to physically drive to see someone. You can log on your computer or your phone and see a therapist or your friend.
In the privacy
virtually.
of your home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anonymously.
Yes, and you'll feel more comfortable too, because there's nothing like walking into a stranger's office and wanting to like say everything you want to say, spill your guts, so to speak.
Right.
But if you're at home, you might feel a little more comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I've had several instances where people call me, do you know a black psychologist? Do you know a black psychiatrist? So I have some now that I routinely refer people to, like, oh, my kid is going through this, but I prefer them to speak to a black counselor or a black psychologist. I say, okay, let me call this person that you're going to be calling them. Oh, my husband is going through this. All right, I say a black psychiatrist. I know who to call. I say, okay, let me call this person. I'll get you an appointment. So I've been doing that in the community right now to help us kind of break that barrier to say, because it's hard to find. If you call the office, they booked for 1 year to see you. So I'm able to go through the back door and say, hey, my family, can you see them next week?
Wow.
And they'll make accommodation.
That is so great. And the other way that this manifests itself too, we see it on the news all the time, where someone they've suffered with mental wellness, and now it's mental illness because it's been untreated, and now they're in trouble with authorities.
Yes.
Then they go to jail. There's no help there for that, and it just gets worse and it gets worse. And so that's what the message we need to have is like, you don't have to end up here.
No.
If you treat it, if you get help before any of that happens, all of that can be avoided.
Exactly, especially if you feel like something is not right. Seek help. I talk about awareness. We have to be aware, like, okay, something is not right. The way I'm behaving, the way I'm acting, I don't think something is right. Let me seek help, just in case. Yeah. Even if it's a primary care doctor you want to go see and talk to, and they can help you and give you guidance and say, you're fine, just do this and do that and do that.
You used the analogy a little while ago while we were off air about a pressure cooker. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So, the pressure cooker has what I call a release valve. When the pressure builds up, the release valve, you open it up and release the pressure, and it recalibrates. The same thing is us human. But that pressure, our release valve is us talking about what we're dealing with. When you get out of your chest, you feel free.
Yes.
I have 3 friends that I often speak to all the time, and they call me too, that they just want to talk. And I just listen for an hour. I don't have to say a word. I just listen. And after that, they feel great because they just released their tension.
Just got it,
So we all have to do that and just get it out. I told my wife, you cannot go to bed at night worrying about something, whatever it is at the end of the day. Get out of your chest.
Talk about it.
Otherwise, you go to bed thinking about it.
Yes.
You can't sleep well.
Yes. Then you wake up with it the next day, and you carry it, and then something else is going to be added to that the next day because you didn't release the thing from yesterday.
And you don't sleep well.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It compounds
Oh my
everything else.
gosh, that is so true. The other thing too, and then this is the last question, because I remember when I first reached out to you to come and do this, and you messaged me back one time, and you said, I am on a ski vacation. I will contact you when I get back. How important is it for, to have that time with your family, away from everything else, and even just working out on a daily basis or getting something in?
Yeah, so I talk about the concept of life balance. I don't believe in work-life balance because work is part of your life. So it's a continuum of life balance. And you have to figure out how to say, you know what, I'm taking this time for me. Because it's part of my life. I cannot segment my work and this. No, it's continuum because my work pays for my living and all this other stuff, but it's part of my life. So it's important for us to take time out. I've asked people, when was the last time you took a vacation? They look at me like, I say, why not? I'm too busy. I said, no. Oh, I can't afford to miss. No. I say, if you die right now, they'll hire somebody else to replace you. You need to go because we need that mental release and mental break to just disconnect.
Yes.
The beach, go walk
Disconnect.
around the park, something, get away. You have to. I mean, we're frontline workers, journalists, doctors. We have to keep going, but you've got to find ways to disconnect.
Have to. Like I talk about concept of physical well-being, and it includes physical activities, because for your overall well-being also affect your emotional and mental health, and physical well-being is part of that. What are you doing on a daily basis to be active? Do you go running? We got to find something to do. I mean, the World Health Organization recommend at least 30 minutes of moderate activities every day.
Just going. I mean, we live in Florida. Good Lord,
Right.
you can be outside
Exactly.
almost every single day.
And
You
it's
know,
stress release.
Yeah.
I talked about how do I release stress. You know, I talked about mindfulness meditation. I talked about breathing exercise, relaxation. Of course, exercise is one of them.
Yeah.
You know, so figure out which one. There's a lot of tools out there that you can use if you think you're feeling stress to help you press that reset button.
Yeah, that's so important. Dr. Adewale, it has been such a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for just being so candid and so honest, because I feel like we need more of that, because when people see you saying what you're saying, you know, you're a man. You're a human man. And they're like, wow, he's a doctor, but he has these issues as well.
Yeah.
I feel like people will be grateful for that and feel like, oh, I'm not inferior. Because this guy has the same issues as I'm having right
As we
now.
say in the news, he's a real person.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So thank you for sharing your real life experience. Jerry, thank you for joining us,
inviting me.
and thank you for talking about, you know, your struggles and everyone else's struggles as well. I mean, if you're alive today and you are here, you're going through something.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
We're all going through something. So thank you both for joining us, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Real Talk, Real Solutions. We hope you got a lot from this session, and we'll see you next time.